Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is my Forbes colleague, Money and Politics reporter, Kyle Mullins. Kyle, thanks so much for joining me.
Always great to be here, Brittany.
The day Donald Trump's Twitter-esque social media platform Truth Social went public, the billionaire former president's net worth more than doubled. But Forbes also reported that Truth Social brought in $4.6 million in revenue over the past year, which is less than half of an average neighborhood cheesecake factory. So, is this a valuable company?
Listen, Brittany, we've talked about it before. I'm not going to knock the Cheesecake Factory, but when it comes to Truth Social, it really depends on how you look at it. On the one hand, Forbes uses the public valuation of the company, the stock price, and its market capitalization when we're considering how to value it for someone's fortune. That's what we've been doing for decades. That's what we do it for all the other billionaires. We're going to do it for Donald Trump as well. And according to that valuation, his shares in that company, which is over half the company, were worth billions and billions of dollars. And the company itself had a market capitalization of over $5 billion. With all of that said, I think there was some evidence that this was a meme stock. I think we'll talk about that a little bit. And so I wanted to dig into what are some other ways of thinking about how we can go about valuing this company. How can we figure out other ways of looking at it beyond just the market capitalization?
And you found 3 ways to value the company. But before we get there, you did mention that this looks like it could be a meme stock. What does that mean?
Yeah, so a meme stock is basically the idea that every once in a while, there's a stock and its value is just wildly divorced, like not even like a little bit divorced, but wildly divorced from the fundamental financials on the ground. To give you an example, we had GameStop and AMC. Those were 2 well-known meme stocks a couple years ago, and they all of a sudden they just start skyrocketing because a group of very active traders, retail traders on Reddit, decided they were going to push these stocks to the moon. And the prices went up 10, 20, 30x. It was enormous. And nothing had really changed with GameStop's business or AMC Theaters' business that had caused their valuation to go up by 10, 20x. It was just that people had decided that they were going to push the stock price up, and that's what they did.
The stock prices, like you're saying, are pushed to the moon. And then what happens? What usually is their fate? And we can look back at either GameStop and or AMC.
Yeah, GameStop and AMC both fell pretty dramatically from their all-time highs. GameStop fell back almost all the way to its sort of pre-meme stock level, if I remember correctly. Not quite all the way, but almost all the way. AMC has fallen most of the way, but not, the meme stock has come off, but AMC Theaters has done significantly better than GameStop, and so it actually didn't, the stock price didn't collapse completely. But that kind of brings us back to the idea that the stock price should be a reflection of the financial fundamentals of the company. And, most of the time we're talking about stocks. When we're talking about stocks, we talk about price to share ratios, that kind of thing. A lot of, tech companies will trade between 5 and 10, at a multiple of 5 to 10. And Truth Social is trading at over 1,200. So at least it was as of last week. So that's the kind of sort of wild gap between financial reality and the stock price, on the market that we're talking about.
So Truth Social has been public since late last month. How are the shares of the social media company doing now as we sit here a few weeks after they were pushed to the moon?
So yeah, a couple weeks ago, late March, the company went public, it completed a merger. It didn't have an IPO, but it did go public via a SPAC merger. And it reached a high of around $80 a share on its first day of trading, and then it fell back down a little bit. It closed a little bit lower than that. It's down to below $40 a share today. So we're talking about a more than 50% drop from its all-time high for this stock.
And how much are the former President Donald Trump's shares worth in the company?
Trump has a little less than 79 million shares in the company. That's over half the company, like I said. And those are worth a little under $3 billion today, if you take today's stock price.
And so people are pushing, as you said, this stock price up. So if he sells his shares, and we talked about this before, that he has a 6-month lockup agreement, he can't sell them before, but let's say he sells them after 6 months, what does the price of this stock look like?
Almost mechanically, if you're talking about an investor who owns over half of the company and they start selling shares, and especially if they start selling a lot of shares, the stock price is going to decline, and it's probably going to decline precipitously. With that said, even if Trump indicates that he might sell some shares, that could drive the price down before that 6-month lockup agreement ends. And even if he doesn't indicate that he's going to sell anything, and even if he doesn't sell a dime, given what has happened to the stock just over the past couple of weeks, I wouldn't bet on its value being particularly high, certainly anywhere near its current value in 6 months. Anything could happen. This is Donald Trump we're talking about, but I wouldn't bet on it.
So let's now talk about Truth Social's current value and how much it might be worth. You came up with 3 different ways to figure out its value. So let's first, what's the market value and how did you arrive at this number?
Yeah, so this reporting is as of last week and late last week. The market value, market capitalization at that point was a little over $5 billion, about $5.2 billion. And I mean, that one is very simple. We use that price, we use that value in our valuations because that's what real people are saying the stock is worth. They are actually buying and selling the stock for that much. And so there's no really, that's the purest expression of how much something is worth, is how much it can be purchased for. So yeah, about $5.2 billion as of last week. It's fallen a little bit since then.
So then you found the transaction value of the company. So walk us through how you found this different number.
So before the company went public, completed its merger, its SPAC merger in March, a group of investors, institutional investors, and these are people who are not retail traders, not big, not necessarily really big MAGA fans, that kind of thing, but they're just institutional investors. They're looking to make money, first and foremost. They might be Trump fans, but that's separate. That, might be separate from their money-making instincts. They bought into the company, and they bought into the company at about an 85% discount relative to what the shares were operating at that point. Now, obviously, there's been some intervening events. The stock went public, for example. But the $800 million, that valuation, if you apply that discount today, would come out to about $800 million. That's a far cry from the 5.2 billion that the market capitalization was suggesting. 5.2 billion is how much Macy's is worth, how much Planet Fitness is worth, how much Alaska Airlines is worth. These are like proper big mid-sized companies. $800 million is not a big, a proper mid-sized company valuation. But still a respectable business. I mean, there's nothing, $800 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Nothing to sneeze at. It's also not a cheesecake factory, as you and I have discussed. I like that point of reference. But we've got over $5 billion. We've got $800 million. And you found at its lowest, it could be worth anywhere between $40 million and $90 million. How did you come up with that range?
So this was a kind of a back of the envelope way of trying to look at the company, really drill down on its fundamentals. And to do that, we use comparisons to other companies. The best comparison is Twitter. Truth Social is, to some extent, a clone of Twitter, or at least a bit of a knockoff. And so we calculated Twitter's approximate value per share, approximate value per user. Twitter is not publicly traded anymore; it doesn't have shares. But calculated its value per user. Truth Social has talked about in its investor presentations that it values itself at a bit of a discount compared to Twitter. There's a number of reasons for that. Truth Social has a smaller user base, so you're going to have a lower value per user and lower revenues per user because advertisers want to reach the biggest audience that they can. So again, we're talking about, but the key here is Twitter has 540 million users. Truth Social, as our best estimate, has no more than 7 million users if we use the former president's followers on that platform as sort of a proxy for that. So that puts the value really, really low. We came out to a value of around $90 million for the whole company. Again, a very far cry from that 5.2 billion. if you use Meta as a comparison, so Meta is a publicly traded company. They have a publicly available price to share ratio. They're doing fantastic right now. They have huge investments in AI. They just announced shareholder dividends, so their share prices are up significantly. So they're trading at about 10 times their annual revenues, market cap annual revenues. Is about a 10x multiple. You apply that same thing to Truth Social's a little over $4 million in annual revenue, and you get $40 million as sort of a floor for the company's value. And I think I should just note one more thing while I'm at it here. On his personal financial disclosures, President Trump declares his stake in the company as only being worth $5 to $25 million. Now, that was filed before it went public, but still remarkable that he's only actually valuing his share at that amount, on his financial disclosures.
So you just threw a ton of numbers at us, which I really like, but from your own reporting, you found, or you believe, that Truth Social has about 7 million users. How much then is one user worth?
So again, this kind of depends on how you measure it. If you give them the benefit of the doubt and you say that, you use the revenue figures that, they are projecting they're going to have by 2026, and they're saying, and then discounted according to Twitter, that kind of thing, we'd be looking at something like $12 or $13 a user. If you actually look at their actual revenues from last year, we're looking at something closer to like 50 cents a user. These are not enormous values. Compare that to Twitter X, they have a value of over $20 a user.
Wow, so that was my next question, actually. How does its estimated value stack up to other social media companies? I'm looking at, I don't know if competitors is the right word, but I'm looking at Facebook, Twitter, or X rather, Instagram, companies like that.
So Truth Social has a very small user base. That 7 million number that I tossed out before, that's about the number of followers that former President Trump has on the platform. That's why we're using it as kind of a rough estimate of their user base. They actually don't report their active user numbers. They're not legally required to or anything, but they say in their SEC disclosures that they don't even measure that, which is an interesting approach for a social media company, but they say they're taking a different approach. So because they have such a small user base compared to the billions of people who are on all of Meta's, Facebook's various different platforms, Facebook, Instagram, et cetera, and the 540 million people that Elon Musk and Linda Yaccarino say are on Twitter/X, we're talking about a significantly smaller valuation than these big companies.
Kyle, per usual, thank you so much for your reporting.
Of course, always happy to be here, Brittany.